Welcome to the SpoonFull Show. I'm Rachel, and this is a space for real conversations about chronic illness, hope, and learning to keep going even on the hardest days. Because strength doesn't always look loud, sometimes it's simply taking life one spoon at a time. Welcome to the SpoonFull Show. My name is Rachel, and I am so excited for today. My guest today is patient advocate, health coach, and one of my favorite people, author Amy Kurtz. Facing debilitating pain and health issues since her teenage years, Amy Kurtz well knows the frustration, fear, and isolation that comes with chronic illness. She wrote the best-selling book, Kicking Sick, Your Go-To Guide for Thriving with Chronic Health Conditions, as a reader's guide to managing debilitating conditions and living fully. A distinct voice in the health space, Amy's work has been heralded by Mark Hyman, Chris Carr, and others. Lena Dunham named Kicking Sick one of her top 10 desert island books of all time in New York Magazine. She has contributed to Oprah Daily and made multiple appearances on Good Morning America as well as Fox. Amy's second book, But You Look Fine, Trapped in the Hell Between Sick and Well and How to Break Free, was released from Hachette yesterday. I am so excited to bring you this conversation and to share this wonderful book with you. So let's get started. Amy, I'm so excited to have you back on the podcast today to talk about your new book, But You Look Fine, Trapped in the Hell Between Sick and Well and How to Break Free. This book puts so many words and experiences for people with chronic illness who quietly carry all of this medical trauma, masking, and disconnecting from ourselves, and ultimately learning how to come to where we are again. I honestly felt seen reading it, and I know our listeners will too. Welcome back to the SpoonFull Show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
For those listeners that are seeing you for the first time, share a little bit about your health journey and what led you to writing this fabulous book.
So my health journey is long-winded, and it started when I was 14. I had really pretty incredible back pain, and I couldn't find any answers as to why it was happening. So I was put on anti-inflammatories, and that's like when the first difficulty started regarding my health, where I went from a normal kid to a kid in pain. Being 14 years old is hard enough, but I just tried to adapt. And that's what so many people with chronic illness do, is we're constantly pivoting and adapting to a new normal. And then when I was 25, I went abroad and I had a health crisis. It was really intense. I gained 30 pounds in 30 days. My hair was falling out. I was aching all over my body. I had rashes. I could barely keep food down. It was as intense as it sounds. And it sent me on a quest to figure out what was wrong. And I went all the way from Western medicine to Eastern and then landed somewhere in the middle. I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism, which I have, and other things, but I thought I was at the bottom of it, and I wasn't at all. I felt better than I had, and I wrote my first book, Kicking Sick, Your Go-To Guide for Thriving with Chronic Health Conditions, because I was in my 20s, early 30s, and all I could find was how to be sick and tired, and I was never going to accept that that was going to be my life. So I really wanted to create something that was an uplifting guide for young women to help make something that could be so defining, transformative for themselves. And it was during that time, and I'm so proud of what I accomplished with that book, that I started to feel like maybe I don't have this all figured out. I was writing, and I would go home after press, which I felt so lucky to have, and the book really took off, and it's in a beautiful way, in a way that I didn't expect it to, and it was like beyond my dreams. And I would go do press, and then I would come home and feel like, oh my God, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Like, I just don't have the fuel in me. And it was then that I started to realize I don't think I really have a handle on this the way that I thought that I did. So I went to my 36th doctor. Yes, 36. And that takes a lot in the first place, just mustering up the energy, strength, and mental willingness to try again and to have hope and to think that someone might be able to help you. And I loved him right away. He looked through my Harry Potter anthology of medical records and he did all of his testing. And I just was hoping on a prayer that I would have an answer that actually made sense. And he said, I'm very clear what's going on here. You have late stage neurological Lyme disease and co-infections. And everything inside of me knew it was true. It was like something reverberated through my whole body where I was like, that's it. And I had been searching for 2 decades for the right answer. And that really was such a powerful moment for me because it brought up a lot for me. And on one hand, I was so proud that I had never given up on myself. So I felt tremendous pride. But I also felt so much grief for the years of my life that I spent trying to find answers and not getting them. I also felt anger for all of the invalidating gaslighting that I'd experienced over the years, which is not uncommon for people with invisible illnesses. And I also felt hope because it was something that I could get better from. And I trusted him. And it wasn't until I started to physically feel so much better that I started to mentally feel really bad in a whole new way that I couldn't explain, that I couldn't find language for, that I couldn't find a way out from. I didn't even know what was happening to me. It was like my baseline had totally shifted. And that's when I just decided to write my new book, But You Look Fine.
Yes. And you introduce this concept of medical trauma brain, or MTB. Explain what that is and why you felt it was important to give this experience a name.
Well, 194 million Americans are struggling with at least one chronic health condition right now. That's a 25% increase since I wrote my first book, Kicking Sick. And that means that if you don't have it, the person next to you does. And I didn't know what was happening inside me. It wasn't until I was on a date with my husband that he said to me, hey, I need to say something to you a little provocative. And I was like, oh, great. Okay, good. Okay, here we go. What is it? And he was like, I really just feel that I always knew there was going to be a second phase because what you've been through is so traumatic. And it sent me on this, like, I just was like trying to process it for days, but I realized I was struggling in a new way. I was physically better, but mentally I hadn't gotten the memo. And so I was living from a place of intense fear of it all coming back again like that, intense hypervigilance, extreme anxiety to the point where it was like obsessive compulsive and me just trying to make sure that everything was going to be okay. And I was just so tense, like I couldn't stand down. And I didn't even know that I had changed in that way. I just know I didn't feel as relaxed as I used to. But because I'd been battling for so long and in survival mode for so long, I didn't understand that there would be another phase to healing. So I started doing research and I couldn't find anything that explained what I was experiencing. But when I saw the statistics, I knew that I could not be alone in it. So I started to discuss it with people in my world and who had been through similar things. And it was like a light bulb went off, like, oh my God, this is exactly how I feel, or that's exactly how this person is after it. And so I realized it's not only for people with chronic disease, it's people who have battled acute illness as well. It's anyone who's been through a life-altering medical condition or scare. And what it is medical trauma brain, or MTB. And I laugh because it's almost obvious when you think about it. Like, how on earth are you supposed to just go from sick to well as if nothing happens to you. There's an expectation in our society where they say you're either sick or you're well. But
Right.
there's literally, it's impossible and insane to have an expectation that somebody just move on from a life-altering physical illness as if they're fine, because everything has changed. The person has changed. I had
Yeah.
changed in every way imaginable. My whole world had changed. The horse, what they say, get back on the horse, but the horse wasn't there anymore. Like nothing's the same. And when you get locked in survival mode for so long, you have to really retrain your brain for how to not be on the hamster wheel anymore, because
Yeah.
the experience of being sick rewires your brain. But the difference between this and post-traumatic stress disorder is post-traumatic stress disorder is one singular event that is awful and changes you forever. Complex post-traumatic stress is when an event happens over and over and over again. But medical trauma brain is, the threat is your body. And the definition of MTB in this book, I call the emotional, psychological, neurological impact and imprint of having been sick.
You describe chronic illness as living in the Shadowlands, that space between sick and well. What does that experience feel like for people who are in that space right now?
I wanted to name how it feels because it's something that's been so unnamed in our culture. I mean, after I had
Yeah.
this idea, I interviewed so many doctors, and I would say, do you ever have a patient who it's like they're better, but they don't know they're better? And when I brought it up, they would say, oh, yeah, I do see that. I do see that. But I would say, what's the name for it? What's the plan out of it? And nobody could tell me what that was. And so then I started interviewing thousands of patients and figured out that this is a really universal experience that hasn't yet been validated or named. And for me, I explain the symptoms of what I was going through as a place called the Shadowlands, because it would be like I was out to dinner with my friends and I was there and I love them and I was having a good time and I was laughing at the jokes and I was eating dinner. We were spending time together. And yet there was a part of me that was so far away,
Yeah.
locked in a sandstorm desert with no way out. And it felt like my brain was separate from me in a prison of fear.
Mm.
And I call it the Shadowlands. And it's really resonated with people in that your experience or someone else's experience might be different than mine, but it feels like you're in the upside down world in Stranger Things where you look fine, but you're struggling in this new way that doesn't have a framework until now. And you just sort of feel like you're floating around in this dark abyss that's not quite in the real world. And yet there's an expectation that you should be back at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have you experienced that?
I feel like I'm in that place right now where I used to have so many more emotions about my chronic illness. And I feel like now I'm just in a place where it doesn't affect me as much. And it's almost like just shutting off everything
Hmm.
from my life as far as, the chronic illness. It doesn't take over me like it used to, but I feel sometimes like I don't have any feelings at all about it and just
Mm.
kind of feeling that disconnection.
Yeah, well, that's a symptom of it. I have
Hmm.
interviewed a lot of different people, and one of them said that they experience it just like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to, I used to think about it a lot. And it would bring up so many emotions, especially with MS being a progressive disease, all of
Yes.
those, what is it going to look like here and what is it going to look like there? And I just don't have that anymore. And sometimes I feel like I'm not living the way that I should be because I'm not enjoying my life because I've just disconnected from everything because there's a lot of things, going on
Yeah.
physically.
Yeah. I totally understand that.
Yeah, that's one of the strongest themes in the book is disconnecting from ourselves. What did that disconnection look for you personally?
Well, for me, it was that I started struggling so young that I learned very early that other people were uncomfortable with me being sick or me being in pain. And so I started to like wear a mask all the time that would present like that I was better than I was. And I didn't even realize that I was doing it for so long. But sometimes it just felt easier to just pretend I was better than I was so that I wouldn't have to disappoint or deal with other people's reactions to me when really I was the one that needed support. So it would be like I said, like I'd be out with my friends or I'd be out with my husband, but I wasn't really there because part of me was in like tremendous grief. A part of me was like doubting myself after I had been so trusting of myself before. So I think that's the way I experienced it was that, but it presented more in an anxiety
Hmm.
than like a disconnect.
Yeah. And one of the things that really resonated with me is as you're talking about masking is being the good patient. And I'm stuck right now in I have some things that aren't diagnosed yet and being stuck in the doctors that aren't really looking at what this could be, looking at the root cause. And so I feel like I've been masking that good patient and trying not to ruffle any feathers, trying not to um, push them too hard. And why do you think that people with chronic illness fall into that trying to be a good patient mask?
I love this question because we are taught, especially as women from a very young age and all people
Yeah.
to defer to people in power. When we're young, that's our parent or our guardian. And when we're a patient, it's our doctor. I mean, how often have you heard the phrase doctor knows best?
Mhm. Yeah.
So you're desperate. You don't feel well. You need someone's help. In my case, a lot of times it felt easier to just want to like throw spaghetti at the wall and be like, can you just handle this for me? Because it's too much for me to handle myself. And in the book, I talk a lot about this interview that I was so privileged to do with Dr. Gabor Mate, where he shares that when you're young, you choose, if something happens, you have to choose attachment or authenticity. And when you're young, you would choose attachment because you need somebody to survive. But when you're older um and you're in a situation with a medical doctor or somebody else, you will often choose attachment because you need them for something instead of saying, am I being my authentic self? Does this feel right to me? Does this feel like I'm being heard and seen and believed? And so for me personally, I experienced a real disconnect because I wanted the doctor to give me the answers because I didn't have it, but I did know enough that I knew something was wrong. I didn't give up on myself for 36 doctors. And yet the experience of being a patient still eroded my self-trust because invisible illnesses are so complex. They're hard to diagnose. And I personally didn't know what to do. I allowed really bad behavior that I probably, if it was somebody else I loved, would say, don't put up with that, go find someone else. But I find oftentimes as patients, we're like, well, they're the best for this and they have done a lot of good stuff. So I'll just
Yeah.
let it kind of get shelved for later. The problem is that once you feel a lot better, all of it's coming up for the taking. There's no shelving it for later. It's
Yeah.
just being shelved until you have the capacity to feel it.
I'm going to stop here real quick. If you're living with something people don't see, POTS, multiple sclerosis, fibromyalgia, or anything like it, I made some t-shirts, sweatshirts, and hoodies just for you, so you don't have to explain it. You can find them at spoonfulofstrength.etsy.com or click the link in the show notes. Now back to the show. I really loved the relationship that you talked about with your doctor of making it a 50-50 partnership. And I feel like a lot of us go into it of just handing over all of the power to the doctors. And can you talk about getting into that 50-50 partnership and being a team and really managing your health yourself?
Yeah, so I met my doctor who finally correctly diagnosed me, and I I was uncomfortable because I had spent so many years just doing everything they told me to do. And side note, also just not listening to my instincts. Like,
Yeah.
if I say this in the book, but I would get pricked 5 times for blood work with a nurse. And inside myself, I'd be like, why don't I ask for someone else? But I wouldn't. Or I just wouldn't listen to all my instincts. But when I found him and he told me what I had and he told me there was a way out and that it would be hard, he said to me, ultimately, I'm here to guide you and for anything that comes up, but the speed and the pace is entirely up to you. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? Like, up to me? Like,
Yeah.
I get to be a part of this. And he was the first doctor that had asked me what I thought about things and asked me what my intuition was, or asked if I had found anything I wanted to bring up with him. I had never experienced that in my whole life. And it was a weird balance because at first he would say, oh, like, I use this analogy in the book where I'm a little kid in rain boots and it's like I want to splash in the puddle, but I'm looking to the parent or the authority to tell me I can. And I didn't want to because I just didn't think I should, but he's like, get in there, like, go splash. And I use that example because the truth is that nobody cares about you more than you. Nobody is going to have the will to get you better more than you are. And if you are not an active part of your healing, you will never have agency over your health. What my relationship with him taught me is that I have to be his partner and that he needs me to be his partner as much as I need him to be. And that was so, so healing for me in a way that I never expected it to be, because he demanded that I meet him in the middle. And I had another physician who, her and I were just chatting, and she was saying, sometimes it could be frustrating as a doctor because we can give you our best advice and guidance, but ultimately it's up to the patient to make it happen in between appointments. And that's really the case, is like 20% is what you do with the doctor. 80% is you outside of the doctor's office being willing to step into your power, take care of your health, make all of these lifestyle changes that could make you feel better. There's a lot you can do for yourself that nobody teaches you. And I think the most important part of being your own advocate is realizing that whoever you choose as your partner to healing respects you, that you respect and trust them and feel safe in their care, and that you never forget that you have to meet them in the middle.
Mm-hmm. That's what I loved about your book is it's not Eastern medicine is better, Western is better. It's not all for one. It's got to be that collaborative effort. And when people read this book, I'm sure they're going to be feeling like, that sounds wonderful. This is exactly what I need to do. But how do you get there? How do you get there with that doctor? And, I'm asking for myself as well, because I'm in that spot right now where I'm not 50-50. And so how do you approach that? How do you make that work?
The first thing is that not every doctor who's thought of as the best is the best for you. And I would encourage every patient who doesn't feel like they're in the right dynamic with their doctor, which, trust me, I saw 35 people. I get it. I really get it. I am you. I get it. You need to be really clear with yourself about what you need in a partner to help you feel better. And my list might be different than yours, but for me, some of the things that were the most important to me was that I felt safe, I felt respected, and like my opinions mattered. And I felt that I was with somebody who had seen people like me before and always came with new solutions to the table. And I was unwilling to settle for somebody who didn't meet those 4 key criterias because I know myself and I know that I won't feel safe in that. So it's really first being clear with yourself. And then it's not like you would marry the first person you ever went on a date with. You have to really interview them and see if they're good for you and see if you trust them and if you feel like they meet your list. You know, it's not dissimilar from dating. It's like coming up with your must-haves and then going and finding somebody who's going to meet that and help you get better because ultimately that's up to you. I spent so much time tolerating horrible behavior that was so invalidating and so gaslighting. And ultimately, I'm urging people to not do what I did and do what I'm telling you to do, which is be in charge of your own well-being. And you get to create your A team. You get to find the people that work for you. You don't need to settle for somebody who doesn't empower you
Hmm.
or
That's
hear you or
right.
just looks at their screen or says, do you need a Xanax or anything like that, you know?
Right.
And some people are great for a season or a reason, and then it's time to move to a different person.
That's such good advice. I want to talk a little bit about another major part of the book of the nervous system and the trauma responses, things like hypervigilance, survival mode, disconnecting from body signals. Can you talk about how trauma and chronic illness can become connected in your body?
Yeah, well, trauma is when you get sick, when your life changes on a dime, or you go through anything that's acute, like a heart attack, a stroke, a car accident that puts you in tremendous pain, to living like I have for decades with something that's invisible to, or like, but you look fine.
Mhm.
It makes you go into survival mode because your primary goal is to survive. And so you go into a fight flight reaction where everything that was important to you is now the second thing or third thing on the list. And your number one thing is getting better, feeling seen, feeling heard, and getting to the other side. For me, so it was like, so I could get back to my life as I thought it would be. And what happens after you're resilient for that long is it becomes a chronic resilience, which I actually think is not healthy because you
Right.
literally are on a hamster wheel of survival stress. And when you get better, your brain doesn't understand, oh, hey, my body's safe now. I could get off this wheel. It literally is rewired. So if you don't rewire it back to a place of safety, it never knows that it's safe. So, like I shared before, I was better,
Mhm.
but I didn't know I was better. I was acting as if I was still sick. And this can come up with, I share this story in the book, but one of my friends had hemiplegic migraines and she had them for years. And they were horrible and completely debilitating. Anyone who has them knows or knows
Yeah.
anyone that loves one knows they're debilitating. But it wasn't until I shared this idea with her that she said, oh my God, I don't really actually even have migraines anymore. But the second I get an onset of an aura or I feel like a headache could be coming on, I immediately pop an Advil and I'm on the couch. And so that's what I'm talking about is this impulsive, quick reaction to damage control is a trauma response. Even when you're better. I was better. I was so much better. I felt like I had a new body, but I was so sick inside my head.
I can see that for many of us with chronic illness of that first inkling of a flare, or you wake up and you feel like you're not right, and all of that panic comes in of like,
Oh, yeah.
"Oh, am I getting a flare? Oh, is this gonna be a new symptom?" And I can see where it can really take over.
It feels like you're bracing for impact,
Yeah.
right? Like you're
Mhm.
like, "I gotta buckle down now," like, because
Yeah.
it feels like you're still in the storm,
Mhm. Yeah. It's exactly.
but
And
nobody talks see, this is something I wanna say because I know that you're gonna resonate with this, is like, we live in a country that sees the physical body as separate from the mental, psychological,
yeah.
emotional body, and it is literally impossible to separate the mind, body, and spirit. They are one.
Mhm.
And by living in a country that has a medical system that sees the physical body as separate from the rest of us, combined with this chronic disease epidemic in our country, it leaves people not understanding that they can't disconnect them
Yeah.
because what happens to one part of you happens to all of you.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes such great sense, and you talk a lot about in your book about different therapies and modalities that have helped you. I
Yeah.
have tried EMDR, I've done family, oh gosh,
IFS
yes, internal family
system.
systems
Yeah.
therapy. Yeah, and that has helped me quite a bit. What are some of the things that if somebody finds themselves in this Shadowlands, what do you think is the first place to start, or a couple of the first places to start to really try and focus on the mental part and the trauma of what they've gone through with their body?
Well, I first want to say that I feel there's a loneliness epidemic in our country, and I can't think of anything more lonely than living with an invisible illness that people can't see.
Mhm.
So just the experience of that is traumatic in itself, of not being believed. And for me, once my husband and I had this conversation, he's not a doctor. He just loves me and could see that I was really struggling in a whole new way.
Yeah.
It made me start to think, okay, I don't get it. Like, I've done talk therapy. I thought I was doing all the things, but nobody had said to me, hey, you might have a mental, emotional reaction to this after you start to feel better. If they had, I probably would have been integrating these things earlier. I didn't know. That's why I'm sharing
Yeah.
this because I hope it helps people understand that there's so much they can do even while they're in the process of getting better. But I was so anxious. I started cognitive behavioral therapy, which I found extremely helpful. Um, it's a brain body therapy. There's a difference. And I talk about this in the book that there's brain body therapies and then there's body brain therapies like IFS, like you were talking about.
Yeah.
But CBT really helped me understand my stress spikes and my anxiety spikes and how to give that stress response space to see if it was really an emergency or if it just felt like one. It gave me so many tools to help understand myself better or talk back to my fears. And that was really, really helpful for me. But it wasn't enough because I couldn't just mentally push through blocks that I had. It helped a lot. But I had this idea, oh, I'm just going to add in EMDR because I had heard really wonderful things about it. And I had actually done it for other things in my life. And it felt like those two things together really helped me the most, where I could
Mhm.
understand, like, this is just a fear, but this is not a tidal wave right now. This just feels like one. And to get to the root of the trauma and be able to help myself mentally really worked so well. But then I explored more in the book where I share all of these different modalities because there's so much you can do at home by yourself for free. But there's also, when you need it, people that can really help you. And Dr. Peter Levine gave like some beautiful somatic experiencing exercises. That's what I call body brain therapy, where you're
Mm.
connecting to the sensations within your body and trying to calm them down somatically instead of mentally. But I think a combination of all of these are really important. And like I said, there's so many things within the book that I give you that you can pull into your toolbox. But what was really important to me when writing it is that I don't want to tell you what to do. I want the reader to learn how much they can do to help themselves and put their own toolbox together. Because at the end of the day, you're the only person who's going to get you out of this. You're the one that was so smart, that knew that something was wrong. You're the most resilient person. You've gotten yourself this far. It's taken tremendous strength and resilience. And I know that people who feel stuck in the Shadowlands or feel like they resonate with what I'm saying with MTB, I know you have it in you to help yourself get free. You will never be free unless you address the psychological, emotional wound of having been sick. And my hope with this book is that you take what works, you toss the rest, and you find freedom and agency within yourself so that you can live a life where you're fully present and you're not like behind the veil.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
You shared a story in your book about being caught in a massive wave as a child and realizing that the only way was to move with the water instead of fighting it. So, how did that become a metaphor for you for healing?
I'm crying. um, oh, that's a great question. I've always really loved water. So that's been something I've always wanted to be in, above, around, or near water my whole life, ever since I was little. And all of these water analogies just kept popping up in the book. Some of them even got cut that I loved so much. Like, I'll share this one with you now because I know you're going to get it. But I remember being little, and I was the youngest of three girls. And we used to go to the beach every summer with our best family friends. And the boys in that family were my sister's age. And I was always just like the youngest. And once I hit the height and weight requirement, I was like, it's on. I'm going to the slides. I'm going on the big kid slide. I'm one of them. I'm going to have the best day of my life. And I go up to the top. I get on the raft. I go. I'm so psyched. I'm in my Speedo. I felt like Piglet in a Speedo because I get stuck in the middle. Like my raft wedges to the side because I was too light
Oh my
and I
goodness.
can't get down. So I'm in the middle and I'm a little kid. So I'm thinking, what do I do? And I get up and I like look around and I think nobody's going to find me because I'm little. And I don't understand that there's people monitoring from the top and that they'll stop the water slide. But I just felt so helpless and so hopeless and like I'm stuck in this place and I have maybe I'll just stay here forever. That was my thought when I was little. And then my best family friend, Seth, comes barreling down the water slide on his raft, pulls me onto his, and away we go to the bottom. And it ended up being fine. But a
Yeah.
lot of people who struggle with any kind of illness feel like they're wedged up, like life is just passing them by. The stream is going down the slide and we're just stuck and like we're paused. And so that's an example. I don't know why I just wanted to share that with you, but that was actually going to be in chapter 4 and then it got cut. But I share a lot of different water analogies because if you think about a giant wave coming, you have two choices. You could either run away and you're definitely going to get tumbled and probably seriously hurt, or you can sink down under it and let it pass you, even if it's so terrifying and scary. But the only way out is through. And as hard as these challenges are, and trust me, I get it, they're heartbreaking, they're devastating, they're life-altering in every way. You're the only person that can get you through it. And it's going to hurt 80 million times more to resist the wave. Does that make sense?
Oh, makes so much. Sorry. It makes a lot of sense.
It
Yeah.
made me cry when you brought it up because it's when it's scary. I
Yeah.
mean, it's really scary.
Yeah. To really sit down and think of it, everything about chronic illnesses can be terrifying, and just sitting in it and thinking about it is just can be so overwhelming. And And so I just love this book so much. I really did. My favorite book is Kicking Sick, and then you send me this one, and I'm like, I don't. It's like, my kids. Which one do I like better? And they're both very different.
Oh.
But what I really loved about the book and Kicking Sick as well is that you bring in so many other voices and, whether it be patients or doctors or therapists and all of these people, and you use that information to bring us this wonderful book that we can relate to. It's not There's so many great stories in it and things that you explain in a different way that makes it make sense. And it was one of those things that I didn't realize I didn't realize what chronic illness had done to me before reading this, and sitting in it, I feel like I can look and say, "Okay, well, what do I need?" And going back and really trying to process it and finding the resources that I need and going out and finding doctors and finding the care that I need to take care of myself, and it's just so beautifully written. I just can't express how wonderful it is.
Thank you so much. That means so much to me. I'm so happy that you found it useful and made you realize things about yourself so that you could not feel so stuck.
Mhm,
Millions of us are suffering from this invisible wound. Doctors don't diagnose it, patients don't acknowledge it, and sufferers don't admit to it. And so it doesn't have to be that way. We don't
mhm,
have to suffer in silence. This is something that can be named, that I hope becomes a part of healthcare in the future. Um, Writing it saved my life in a way, like it saved my spirit, and I hope that it sets readers free. I didn't realize how much I needed to write it. Um, you know, and I just want to say that anyone who's ever battled serious illness will tell you that they get to intimately know the most important person in their whole life, which is them,
mhm,
and that there has to be this key balance to strike, like processing the grief of who you once were and with the dreams of who you thought you'd become, and recognizing that just because this seismic split happened in your life that you didn't expect or see coming doesn't mean that you had that your life isn't your life. I used to think like this is me before I got sick and after, and once I finish this I'll get right back to where I was.
yeah,
But the truth is, if you zoom out and you eagle eye down and you say, like, I was an actor. That's who I was my whole life. I knew from age 5. And then I was sick. And then I was a patient. But if I didn't go through the tremendous adversity that I did, I would never have started writing.
mhm,
And then there wouldn't be you and me.
yeah,
And just because something looks different than how you thought it was supposed to doesn't mean that it's not yours and that there isn't something that you can learn from. Nothing changes your life more profoundly and more pervasively than getting ill. And all of life's superficial distractions fall away when you're fighting for your life. But there is a way through, and I didn't know. So, what I'm hoping that I urge people to do with reading this is to take this part really seriously because it's ultimately the key to your freedom.
mhm, mm. And your book came out yesterday, and so it's available now. I've got it right here. I've got so many little dog ears and
Oh,
all of that, and I will be keeping it close to my heart.
wow.
Can you tell us where we can find this, where they can follow you and get this tremendous book?
Yes. So, my book, But You Look Fine, Trapped in the Hell Between Sick and Well and How to Break Free, is available wherever books are sold. You can find me on my website, amykurtz.com, or Instagram _Amy Kurtz. Come say hi. And yeah. I hope it helps you.
Oh, such a great conversation. I just love the
I love being
compassion that
with
you
you.
have in your book. And I appreciate you being here and taking time out to talk with me today.
Anytime.
Now you know why Amy is one of my favorite people. I want to thank her for being here for such an honest and meaningful conversation. I think so many people listening are going to feel deeply seen by this book and her story, especially anyone who has struggled with feeling dismissed, disconnected from themselves, or trapped in that space between sick and well. Amy's new book, But You Look Fine, Trapped in the Hell Between Sick and Well and How to Break Free, is out now. Click the link in the show notes to find your copy. As always, thank you for saving some spoons to be with me today. Until next time, take care. Just a quick reminder, everything shared here is based on personal experiences. Please consult your doctor for your own care.